From the Enlightenment came new ideas about freedom and rights, but now those ideas would ignite real revolutions. In 1776, 13 colonies declared independence from Britain. The Declaration of Independence, inspired by Locke's philosophy, stated that all men are created equal. George Washington led the fight, and by 1783, America was free. Just 6 years later, in 1789, France erupted. The people rose against kings and privilege, demanding liberty, equality, and fraternity. The Bastille fell and the monarchy collapsed. It was the birth of modern democracy, but also chaos and bloodshed. Let's go back to the start and discover how these two revolutions changed the course of history. Welcome to this house. Today we are exploring the American and French revolutions. In 1776, Great Britain ruled over 13 colonies in North America, but discontent was growing. The British government had passed laws to raise money from the colonies, like the Stamp Act. This meant that every legal document had to have a stamp on it and cost money. Many colonists felt that these laws were unfair because they didn't have any say in Parliament. They had no voice in making laws which governed them. In 1770, a series of Enlightenment ideas began to influence American thought. Philosophers like John Locke argued that people were born free and equal and had natural rights to life, liberty, and property. Locke also argued that governments were created to protect these rights, and that if a government infringed upon them, the people had a right to rebel. These ideas were spread around the colonies through books, pamphlets, and newspapers. Soon calls for independence were heard throughout the land. On July 4, 1776, the 13 colonies made a formal declaration that they were free and independent states. This document explained why. It is called the Declaration of Independence. It said that all people are created equal and have certain unalienable rights that cannot be taken away. It also said that governments get their power from the people, and that if a government becomes destructive to the people's rights, the people have the right to alter or abolish it. The document was signed by representatives from each of the 13 colonies. It was an incredibly brave thing to do. Each of the signers risked their lives as enemies of the crown. They knew that King George II would not take kindly to this act of rebellion. But who were the patriots fighting for? One of the main groups were the Sons of Liberty. They were a secret society founded in the 1760s to protest British rule. They organized boycotts of British goods and even attacked tax collectors. Another group were the Committees of Correspondence. They were formed in each colony to share news and ideas about the resistance. And finally, there were the Minutemen. They were ordinary citizens who took up arms to defend their communities. They were ready to fight the British at a minute's notice. But the Americans were not alone. They had help from an unlikely source, King George II of Britain. He wanted to crush the rebellion as quickly as possible. He sent troops to the colonies, but this only made things worse. By 1776, the British army was defeated and peace talks began. The war officially ended in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris. America was free. The United States of America was born. But across the Atlantic, a different kind of storm was brewing. France had been ruled by kings for centuries. But by the late 1700s, the people were tired of living under a monarchy. They wanted more say in how the country was run. Unfortunately, the king, Louis XVI, wasn't willing to give up his power. He was too busy living a life of luxury and pleasure. He spent money like it would never end and made no effort to hide his extravagance. Meanwhile, the people of France grew poorer and hungrier. They were exhausted from the extravagant spending of the king. Things began to look bleak. Then in May of 1789, everything changed. A group of angry citizens stormed a prison called the Bastille. It was supposed to be a fortress holding some of the king's enemies, but in reality it was just a sad and lonely place where people went to die. When the prisoners heard that help was on the way, they panicked and tried to escape, but the guards stopped them. That's when things got ugly. The mob became violent, and eventually the guards were forced to open the gates. When they did, the crowd rushed in and took control of the building. This event was the spark that started the French Revolution. The French Revolution lasted for 10 years. There were many ups and downs, but in the end, the French people won. They overthrew the monarchy and established a republic. France was one of the first modern democracies. The leaders of the revolution were inspired by the American example. They had seen how a group of ordinary people could come together and fight for freedom. They wanted the same for France. But let's pause for a moment and think about what was happening in France at this time. On the one hand, there was the king and his court, living a life of luxury while the rest of the country starved. Then there was the people, who were tired of being poor and hungry and wanted a better life. Finally, we have the soldiers who were caught in the middle. They were loyal to the king, but they also wanted a better life for themselves and their families. So what side did they choose? One of the biggest battles of the French Revolution was the Battle of the Champ de Mars. It took place on October 17, 1789, when thousands of armed royalist troops were sent to stop a peaceful demonstration by unarmed citizens. Despite being outnumbered, the people fought back. They used barricades and makeshift weapons to defend themselves. The fighting was intense, but in the end, the people won. This was a turning point in the revolution. It showed the people that they could fight back and win. It also showed the soldiers that they didn't have to fight against their own people. Many of them defected and joined the revolution. Sadly, not everyone was happy with the changes taking place in France. Some people, like King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, the Queen, were executed for their role in the old regime. Others, like the soldiers' families, were killed simply for being associated with the revolution. It was a time of great upheaval and change. But what does this mean for us today? Well, there are a few lessons we can learn from the French Revolution. First, ideas can change the world. The French Revolution was sparked by Enlightenment ideas about freedom and equality. Second, freedom often comes at a great cost. The French people had to fight a bloody war to overthrow the monarchy and establish a republic. Finally, true equality requires both courage and sacrifice. The French Revolution showed us that we must be willing to give up our old ways of thinking and acting in order to create a more just and equal world. So what happened next? After the French Revolution, Europe was never the same. The old order had been broken and a new era was dawning. In the next episode, we'll explore how this era would change the world forever. We'll discover how machines and factories transformed society and sparked new revolutions. Join us then to find out more, and thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode.